Chief Kaiser Daliwonga Matanzima served as the long-term leader of Transkei. In 1950, when South Africa introduced the Bantu Authorities Act, Mathanzima convinced the Bhunga, the Transkei Chiefs Council, to accept the legislation. Although initially rejecting the act, the Bhunga were persuaded by Mathanzima by 1955.
A national flag flies over government buildings in South Africa. But this isn't Pretoria, and it's not the South African flag. It's the emblem of the Transkei, the self-governing homeland of the Xhosa tribe, and showcase for the nationalist government's policy of separate racial development. Apartheid applies here just as it does elsewhere in the Republic, but in reverse. The blacks have all the rights, the whites have few. This 80-bedroom hotel, for example, in the Transkei's capital, Umtata, is one of the most modern in South Africa. It's reserved for Africans. All Europeans are excluded.
Mathanzima was born in Kamata, located in Cape Province, and was a brother to George and Ngangomhlaba Mathanzima, as well as a nephew of Nelson Mandela. He spent some of his childhood at Chief Falo Mgudlwa's homestead, a place rich in Thembu history and tradition. Upon reaching adulthood, he was given the name Daliwonga, which means maker of majesty, as a form of praise. Mathanzima pursued his legal studies at Fort Hare University and completed his legal articles in Mthatha, the capital of Transkei, in 1948. However, he did not practice law and engaged in politics related to the Thembu and Transkei. In the 1950s, when the South African government implemented the Bantu Authorities Act, the Bhunga, which is the Council of Transkei Chiefs, initially opposed it. However, Mathanzima managed to convince the Bhunga to accept the act in 1955. The purpose of the act was for South Africa to provide more local power to the chiefs while simultaneously using them to manage the homelands. In 1963, the South African government allowed Transkei to have self-governance, and Mathanzima was chosen as chief minister.
I now have South Africa and the and please keep. We are a party to the breakup of the Republic of South Africa in the form which has satisfied only a minority of inhabitants. And we shall be a party by necessary influence to the restructured Southern African subcontinent.
In his 1975 publication, Independence My Way, Mathanzima put forward that true emancipation would arise from a federation of semi-autonomous black states like Transkei instead of the militant nationalism promoted by the African National Congress. Mandela went on to criticize Mathanzima as a puppet of the apartheid state. Mathanzima joined the United Transkeian Territorial Council in 1955 and became a member of the Executive Council of the newly established Transkeian Territorial Authority in 1956. By 1961, he had advanced to chairman of the TTA, survived an assassination attempt in December 1962 by the Pan-Africanist Congress. Police intercepted Mphoqo members en route to assassinate Mathanzima in Komfimvaba, Transkei. In the confrontation, 7 members of Mphoqo were killed and 3 policemen were seriously injured. In 1963, Mathanzima was a clear choice for Chief Minister of the newly created Transkeian Legislative Assembly. However, his strong backing of apartheid made him an unpopular figure among many. Together with his brother George, Mathanzima established the Transkei National Independence Party, leading it to electoral victories in 1968 and 1963, ultimately being inaugurated as Prime Minister in 1976, when Transkei became the first Bantustan to declare nominal independence. An article in Time magazine at the time noted that, although Transkei declared itself a free state, Mathanzima governed it as a de facto authoritarian ruler, prohibiting local opposition parties and acquiring farmland from the South African government at subsidized prices.
Are you expecting or are you hoping to gain international recognition now as a sovereign state, now that you have renounced South Africa?
In any event, we've never been part of South Africa since we became independent.
But people refuse to recognize you, don't they, as a Transkei
Now they will
nation?
know now that we are a sovereign state.
So you are hoping to get international recognition?
Let us hope they will recognize.
Has recognition been promised to you by certain black African countries in return for renouncing South Africa?
Not at all. We've had no communication whatsoever with the black African states.
Who will you go now for help? Which particular countries will you appeal
Well,
to?
we feel that Great Britain is obliged to look after us.
Great Britain?
Yes. After all, we were a province, we were a colony of Great Britain. We are in this plight today because of the colonization by Great Britain.
You also mention in your statement to Parliament the assistance you will now give to the liberation movements who are fighting against South Africa.
We will speak the same language and we shall act together.
In what way? Can you help explain
In
that?
any other way.
Will you harbour terrorists in this country who are
We
fighting?
will not harbour terrorists terrorists from outside, but we cannot say that there will be no terrorists or from Transkei so far as the Republic is concerned.
So you may well harbour nationalist guerrillas in the Transkei who will be fighting against South Africa.
Well, we'll see what will happen.
In 1978, Mathanzima declared the termination of all diplomatic relations with South Africa, which included their non-aggression agreement. This decision stemmed from South Africa's unwillingness to meet multiple territorial requests from Mathanzima. However, the split was brief. Mathanzima quickly retracted his statement when he required financial support from South Africa. In 1979, Mathanzima assumed the role of state president, while his brother George became prime minister. The administration employed harsh tactics to suppress dissent. In 1980, they prohibited the Democratic Progressive Party, which was led by the beloved Thembu King, Sabata Daliwonga. King Sabata was found guilty of undermining the dignity of the president, Mathanzima, resulting in the loss of his crown. Possible opposition from within his cabinet and party members was either dismissed or demoted. For instance, his defense commander was detained due to allegations of connections to the ANC. Journalists and students also faced harsh restrictions. Mathanzima asserted that collaborating with the South African government served the best interest of Transkei, but many perceived him as betraying the struggle. Nelson Mandela once referred to him as a sellout in the true sense of the term. Mathanzima and Mandela were members of the same royal lineage, with Mathanzima being Mandela's nephew by legal and traditional standards. They studied at the University of Voltaire together and shared a close friendship, even competing for Winnie Madikizela's affection, whose father was part of Mathanzima's cabinet. However, tensions arose when Mathanzima endorsed the Bantu Act, leading him to critique Mandela's involvement in the liberation movement. Despite Mandela's years of imprisonment, Mathanzima sought to convince him to choose banishment to the Transkei over incarceration. For tactical reasons, Mandela declined to meet with him on Robben Island, knowing that being associated with a perceived sellout would convey a negative message to his followers. On February 20, 1986, due to allegations of corruption in South Africa, Mathanzima was compelled to step down from his position as president, despite his claims of wanting to focus on family matters. Kaiser Mathanzima was succeeded by his brother, George Mathanzima, who later resigned amid his own corruption allegations. For a time, Kaiser Mathanzima was still seen as the effective leader of Transkei, but tensions grew between the brothers, leading to Kaiser's temporary detention in Transkei prisons in 1987. After his release, he was confined to Qamata. Mathanzima passed away in Queenstown on his 88th birthday. He was given an official funeral, but it did not reach the level of a state funeral that his former allies and supporters had desired. The mixed sentiments towards him in South Africa were evident in the eulogy delivered by then President Thabo Mbeki. While Mathanzima was recognized as a strict leader, Mbeki acknowledged the positive legacies he left behind, praising his vision for eliminating poverty in South Africa and ensuring education for all citizens. Others who spoke at Mathanzima's funeral expressed admiration for his effort to gain recognition for traditional leaders in the country. Nelson Mandela, the former South African president and Mathanzima's uncle, was absent from the funeral as he was in Dublin, Ireland, attending the opening ceremonies of the 2003 Special Olympics.